From Australia to Amazon, not the Amazon, but Amazon the company, and we have with us Kurt Beidler. Kurt is, we are still filing in. I hate to interrupt the conversations.
Coffee must be really good.
The coffee is great. The food is good too. Wolfgang Puck, people. I don't know if you realize the catering. Okay, so let me start again. Kurt is the director of kids and family for Amazon. Actually, if someone could shut the doors as well, that would be fantastic. If you're near a door, please shut it. Thanks. Where you lead all of the digital and hardware products for kids and families, including Amazon's Free Time Unlimited, and Fire Kids Edition tablet. Is that what you have in your hand?
This is it indeed, yes.
Do you want to just, well, actually, before we get into the hardware, I mean, I think it's a fascinating job title to have, Director of Kids and Family. Mm-hmm. What on earth do you do? What does the Director of Kids and Family at Amazon do?
We innovate in behalf of kids and their parents across all of the devices that Amazon produces. So we are always looking for the next idea. We do a lot of focus groups, and we have something called Open Lab, where almost every week we bring in kids and their parents and talk to them and show them mock-ups of things that we're thinking, or ask them to experience our devices that we've already launched and watch how they do that and get feedback about that. So across all of our devices, we are always looking for ways to make them better for kids and families.
So hold up this remarkable piece of device and just explain what you've got here.
Yeah, sure. So this is our Kids Edition Fire tablet. It is not a toy. It's actually the same device that you would buy for yourself as an adult. So it's a very high-powered, high-performant tablet underneath. The difference about the Kids Edition is that this one comes with this funky case, which protects it. We also put an extended guarantee on it, so if anything that happens in 2 years, we replace it for free, no questions asked. And it also comes with a year of Free Time Unlimited, which is the digital library that we curate in behalf of kids. So we actually go out to content providers like Nickelodeon and Disney and all of the top book publishers, and we license all the best premium stuff that's out there. So at this point, it's about 15,000 premium books, apps, and videos for kids that we license and include in Free Time Unlimited. And we've also curated about 100,000 websites that we include, including YouTube videos and also websites for free with the product as well.
I love the bumpers. I heard it's even the case that if you drop it in the bath, you can send it back and get a new one?
It is, yeah. You can, leave it in the yard overnight, run over it with your car, whatever happens. I like to take it on business trips because it's, I'm known to drop things, and it's also helpful if you have a crying baby next to you.
So we're not talking about kids. Yeah. Adults are using this as well? Well, you're an adult.
Adults use this as well. It comes in really handy if you're clumsy. So.
Okay, that was impressive. Talk to us. I mean, you heard the research earlier and the extraordinary level to which kids are now becoming connected. Talk about the tools we can give kids specifically to stay safe when they're using these devices.
Certainly. How much time should I spend on this question?
You've got a few minutes.
Okay, I'll try to limit it to 45 minutes. This is a deep topic. So I think whenever we talk about tools that we can give to kids, we also have to talk about the tools that we give to their parents, of course, because they're two separate customer sets in our minds, but we have to satisfy them both. So certainly we have built a bunch of robust parental controls that come with Free Time, and Sarah talked a bit about them. We've got a booth out there. This is not an advertisement, but just so we all have the same context, things like setting a bedtime so that your child can't use the device after bedtime. Time limits by activity so that they can read as much as you'd like them to read and only watch videos as much as you'd like them to watch videos, and so on. You set the limits, the system enforces those limits. So there's a robust set of tools like that. And as a software company, we tend to look at problems from a software point of view. So we are always innovating and trying to come up with new ways to do that. So one thing we launched recently, you've heard about our parent dashboard. We launched something called Dinner Time, which is a little button on Parent Dashboard. And by pressing that button, kids can lock parents can lock their kids out of all their devices,
Parental control.
which forces them to come to the dinner table. And so, so there are a lot of software solutions to these types of things. I think the interesting thing that is harder for us to talk about is how those things really can be best used. There are a lot of best practices that I think parents need to share amongst themselves. In my experience, a heavy-handed approach, like, for example, pressing a button to force your child to put down his device and interrupt the activity that he or she was doing, is a very heavy-handed approach. And I think, there are lots of other ways that these things can be used if you actually talk to your kids about these things and sort of set up a contract that they're actually signed up for in terms of, like, what is a good practice and how much time is, a good amount of time for you to be spending, and what are the right kinds of things that they should be doing. I think doing those things in collaboration with kids as opposed to a very heavy-handed approach is a little bit more successful.
Yeah, I mean, in the early days of parental controls, and I'm thinking back to the 90s and the early 2000s, it was all about restriction and shutting down, keeping kids away from. But I think you've taken a much more nuanced approach. Is it still the case that if you as a parent said a half an hour for your kids to read and they start wandering somewhere else, it actually prompts them to keep reading? Is that true?
Yes, we call that learn first. So if a parent sets up a reading goal, the software will enforce that reading goal. And so until they've met that reading goal that you've set up for them, they're unable to do other things on the device, like watch videos or play video games.
Right, so it's almost the opposite of
it's an incentive.
Yeah, it's almost the opposite of what we've thought of in terms of time limits and filters and so on. So how do parents get this balance right between having some amount of control while also allowing their kids to be independent enough to explore the web?
Yeah, that's a very tricky balance. I mean, I really love the metaphor of a walled garden, and that's something that we think about a lot in this product as we continue to refine it and develop it. When I was growing up, I sort of had that experience up in the country and had that experience of, being able to play and discover and learn freely within the boundaries of a walled garden, if you will, that my parents had set up. And a walled garden for a 3-year-old is very different than a walled garden for a 12-year-old. And so the boundaries of that need to keep expanding. So, maybe for a 3-year-old, it's the family room, and for a 9-year-old, it's the backyard, and at some point, it's the neighborhood. But you can only go one direction. Once you start expanding those boundaries, it's very hard to pull them back in. And so I think, recognizing and talking to your kids about this and agreeing with them, sort of what are the right set of boundaries, and then gradually expanding those only in one direction, I think is a way to try to find that balance. If you start with, here's my hand-me-down iPhone, which is completely unrestricted, with a 4-year-old, and you've essentially given them the world at that point, and then you want to dial that back later, and say now you have to play within this restricted walled garden, that's a very difficult conversation to have. And so I think you need to start with, as you would within your physical world, start with a sort of narrower restrictions, and then gradually open those up as kids earn the right to play within a larger environment. But I think it is critical that we give them that independence, the ability to make decisions, the ability to make mistakes, learn from the consequences of those mistakes, etc.
So, I mean, the question arises, why would a company like Amazon want to, innovate in the kids space? Is it, cynically you could say, oh, well, you just want to bring up another generation of Amazon consumers, right? What's the reasoning behind it?
I think that, when I think back to, some of the top products for me when I was a kid and in my generation, which I won't say when that was a long time ago, but things like the Sony Walkman and, the television and the telephone with a cord and all those sorts of things, those were really, really popular kids products, but they were not actually built as kids products. Kids decide what products are kids products, right? And so you should be so lucky to have your product be selected by kids as something that they're interested in using. And so, I think for us, this really all started with the Fire tablets that we started selling, 6 years ago now. And those were not kids' devices at all. They weren't even envisioned as family devices. They were just devices, right? They became very popular because they were well built, had a lot of content, they were priced, pretty well, and so on. So they became very popular among kids and families, which really forced us then to sit back and say, well, what are the functions? What's the content? What are the right features that we need to build as responsible product owners to make these products, which are already being used by kids now, appropriate for that customer set? And so, we've continued. I think this launched about 5 years ago, and we've continued to expand it and refine it ever since to make it, safer and also more engaging and educational for kids.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the history of the use of the iPad as an example, particularly with kids, it's had to be retrofitted with third-party parental controls. Then Apple, of course, created its own controls. But what I thought was impressive about what you guys did with this was you created the hardware and the software with kids in mind straight away.
Yeah.
You engaged with the psychologists, you engaged with the educators.
Yep.
It was a very thoughtful process. We talk a lot about promoting industry best practices. What kind of best practices would you like to see the rest of the industry adopt, or would you like to share with the industry, in terms of, come on guys, here's what you got to do?
Yeah, well, I think that it's an interesting question. It's obviously crosses multiple industries as well. So
Sure.
It's really more of a customer demographic, kids and families, that crosses a lot of different industries. So I don't think there's one industry, so there's not one solution that's going to work. But a couple of general things. I think, again, recognizing that you have two customer sets whenever you're in this space. So we talk to parents and we talk to kids, and we hear very different priorities. And meeting one sometimes negates the priorities of the other. And so listening to both and balancing both is really a critical thing to remember. One of the things that the first version of this actually that launched, it was not the whole device like this. It was just the free-time parental control software that was available on all of our devices. And there was actually a good learning for us on that first version, because we talked to parents and we said, well, what would you like? And they said, well, we want parental controls and we want time limits and we want all these things. And so we built that. And what we built is the free-time parental control software. So not FreeTime Unlimited, which is the digital content library. So it was only the parental controls. And this is what parents told us that they wanted. They wanted to control everything. And so the user experience was parents would set up a profile for each one of their kids, set up time limits and rules and everything that was important to them about that particular profile. And then they would go out and they would get all the digital content that they wanted and add it into the child's profile. So when the kid got the device, it was already in their profile. It was already set up with time limits. It had all the content that the parent had put in there for them. Sounds great, right? Kids did not think that was very great, and they really didn't use it very much. And that was a surprise, and it was a good learning for us. Parents, I think, have very good intentions. They're very, very busy. So they don't necessarily have the time to go and curate a library for kids. They don't necessarily have the money to do that. It can get very expensive when you go out and buy digital content a la carte. And they also just don't know what kids really want. And at the end of the day, kids have a lot of options. If you don't make it fun, they're just not going to use it. And they're going to go and use the PC in the living room or the iPad at the kid's house across the street. I mean, they're going to have other options. So it really has to be fun at the end of the day. Yes, it has to be safe. That is table stakes. But it also has to be really fun and engaging. And so our response to that first failure was really to build on that. So that's still available, and we still have parents who use that. It's free. But the real needle mover for kids in terms of creating something that kids actually loved and spent time using was FreeTime Unlimited. So I think just a good illustration of remembering that you have two different customer sets. Selling something to a parent is one thing, but kids also have to want to use it. And then just continuing to do the experiments, to listen to parents, to listen to kids, and respond to that learning with more and more innovation. It's kind of how we approach it. So.
So we have a panel later today. What would the Jetsons do? So we're going to be Rebecca's going to moderate that. Larry and Robin Raskin, are we here? Hey, Larry and Robin. So we're going to be looking at something called 2020 Vision. In other words, what are we going to be talking about and dealing with in 2 to 3 years' time? What's your perspective? Where are we going? Do you have any products you want to release here and want to mention? What's in the pipeline, do you think, theoretically, Kurt, that might be, our kids will be playing with in the year 2020?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't have any announcements that I'm making today. We have a lot of things in the pipeline. We have a lot of things we're working on. So we continue to, like I said, we talk with parents and kids almost weekly and show them new ideas. So if you want to sign up for one of those betas, feel free to drop me a line. So we continue to kind of look at a lot of different things. Certainly some of the findings from the study that you guys released this morning, I think, were interesting. In terms of how connected kids are and continue to be, and the age at which they get those devices, and I think we can probably expect to continue to see that increase, maybe slowly, maybe dramatically, in terms of the number of devices that kids have access to and the age at which they start to interact with digital and connected devices. So we'll continue to watch out for the needs of kids and parents and do the best we can to keep up with it.
Well, we hope you come back in 2020, if not before, to show off some of these new things you guys are developing. So thank you very much. Kurt Beidler, people.
Thank you.